The lights were the kind that flattened nerves. No music, no warm-up jokes, just air that held its breath. In the green room, a producer walked briskly past a rack of spare jackets and said, almost to the wall, "We're accelerating the segment." Another voice answered, "Copy." That was all. 2 syllables and a clock that suddenly mattered. Tucker Carlson was already mic'd. He stared at a monitor that showed the empty stage, then at the notes he never really needed. Calm eyes, practiced cadence, a smile that could cut if it wanted to. He was not here to chat, he was here to win a frame and keep it. 2 doors down, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez set her phone face down and let the screen go black. No scrolling, no last-second briefing, just a breath held for 4 beats, released for 6, repeated until the room obeyed her pulse. She lowered her shoulders and thought of the first time she'd argued with a landlord about heat in a January that would not forgive. She thought of the first hearing where her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She thought of the line her mother taught her, "Speak as if the person you love most needs this sentence." A runner popped in. 2 minutes. A nod from Tucker, a nod from AOC. The runner disappeared, and the hallway reclaimed its hush. The stage manager's fingers counted them down above the lens. 3, 2, 1. The red tally light glowed. The night began. There was no host monologue, just a single sentence to set the table. Tonight, a conversation about what's real, what's possible, and who pays when we're wrong. The camera drifted to center. 2 chairs, the space between them measured with a ruler. Tucker spoke first. Smooth, minimal preamble. We're told big plans will fix big problems. The question isn't whether ambition sells, the question is whether your family can afford the invoice. He did not look at her yet, he looked at you. So let's stop pretending numbers are mean, they're just honest. AOC didn't rush, and let's stop pretending fear is wisdom. Courage is expensive, so is denial. The bill shows up either way. I'm asking if we can pay for the future before the future sends collections. No applause, no cue to clap. The room wanted content, not choreography. Tucker leaned in slightly. You call it courage, I call it compulsion. When government decides what power you can use, what car you can drive, what words you're allowed to type before a label appears, that's not ambition, that's a managed life with prettier posters. AOC kept her gaze quiet. Or it's a community deciding not to melt the floor we're standing on. You like markets, fine, then publish the price of pollution as loudly as you publish quarterly profit. Put the receipt on the table and watch innovation sprint. He smiled. Who pays while we sprint? Not the same people who have paid for a generation. Not the nurse who can't fill her tank and her fridge in the same week. Not the kid whose inhaler costs more when the air is worse. If we're going to subsidize something, let's subsidize their lungs before we subsidize someone's 3rd yacht. The first flicker of sound from the audience was not applause. It was a soft exhale, the kind that follows a sentence that lands. Tucker flipped to cost. You've proposed targets that rewire an economy. Net zero deadlines that make for great speeches, less great paychecks. When the bill hits the meter, whose job goes first and why is it always the job that owns a toolbox? Then build a plan where the toolbox wins. Tax credits that actually reach a mechanic's garage, not just a venture fund's whiteboard. Training that happens in the county that lost the plant, not in a brochure. Replace the word transition with translation and pay people to learn the language of what comes next. He tilted his head. And when the model fails, when the turbine doesn't show up, when the charger breaks, when the grid coughs at sunset, you always land on the same square. Buy more time with other people's money. AOC shook her head once. When a bridge is old, you don't debate gravity. You repair the bridge. The grid is a bridge. If we fail to thicken it, we fail schools, hospitals, small businesses in August and January both. He watched her for a beat, then looked back into the camera. She speaks beautifully, but beauty isn't a budget. Tell me where to cut so your dream can stand up without leaning on a promise that never arrives.
Cut the subsidies that pretend yesterday is free, she said. Stop rewarding companies that ship smoke and jobs in the same container and call it efficiency. In the loopholes that make pollution a write-off and health a luxury. And make the rules legible. A smart teenager at 2 a.m. should know why a post, a permit, a price got what it got. He blinked at that last sentence. Legible rules. The note was small, the resonance not. A producer in the control room circled the phrase on a legal pad. Legible rules. Tucker moved a pace. You like speed. Speed breaks things. We can't run a country like a beta test. When the product is wrong, the patch note is grief. Then publish the patch note before the launch, she said. Measure. Publish. Pause. Reverse. If harm appears, reverse. Don't gaslight the harmed. The room felt that. Not the policy, the posture. He smiled about warmth. You sell compassion, then smuggle in control. Labels, down ranks, rules that move the goalposts and call it guardrails. She returned the smile, warmer. You sell freedom, then smuggle in neglect. Chaos, capture, rules that never show their face, only their teeth. I'm not asking to shrink anyone's life. I'm asking to print the rules on the box. A silence landed that wasn't empty. It was thick enough to push against. He changed angles. Why should a trucker who works 12 hours buy your dream with his diesel bill? Why should that trucker's daughter buy an inhaler with her college money because we were too polite to require cleaner fuel? She asked. Give the driver choice by paying him to choose cleaner. Put the rebate in his account, not in a press release. The camera cut to the audience for a half heartbeat. You could see the eyes. You could see the math they were doing in them. Tucker went cultural. It's never just energy with you. It's always a bundle. Pronouns, speech codes, what's acceptable to laugh at, what's mandatory to applaud. You don't want a grid. You want a script. AOC didn't blink. You want a bonfire. I want a map. The map has guardrails. The map has exits. The map doesn't tell you what to believe. It tells you where the cliff is. He laughed, lightly. And you're the one with the pen. She shook her head. No. The community holds the pen. Write the policy in public. Publish the risk. Publish the cost. Publish the rollback. If we're wrong together. If we're right, we all get to breathe without apologizing for it. The first real clap came. Not loud, honest. He pivoted to the word that wins TV. Realistic. Is it? Cynicism calls itself realistic to avoid building. Here's my realism. In 10 years, the cheapest power wins. The most resilient grid wins. The town that trained its welders for the new line wins. Why would we decide in advance to be the town that didn't try? The control room's ratings graph ticked up a small hill. Tucker pushed where he thought the ground would give. You talk like a planner and tweet like a poet. Which one shows up when the hospital loses power for 40 seconds in a heat wave? The planner, with a battery the size of a bus parked behind that hospital, with diesel as the third backup, not the first, with a contract that pays the utility to keep that promise and pays a fine when it fails, with metrics printed where any tired nerves can read them. There it was again. Legible promises, printed metrics. A method, not a mood. He came back to price. Families don't live in your abstraction. They live under a number, rent, groceries, gas. The month is 4 weeks long and the paycheck is 3. Where do they find the 4th week while you find yourself? In the money we stop wasting on pretending the old way is free. In the jobs we refuse to export twice. Once when we ship the plant, again when we import the asthma. In the lines we cut by insulating homes so bills go down before posters go up. And then the honesty we owe about who gets paid to keep the bill high. He shifted in his chair. Not much. Enough. She leaned forward for the first time. You are very good at reminding people what they could lose. I'm here to remind them what they could gain. A pay stub that isn't eaten by a utility that never invested. A town that doesn't empty out when the old plant dies because the new one was built with the old workers in the room. He waited a beat. Hope sells. Fear sells. Math doesn't. Try me. Okay, she said. Every dollar in a fossil subsidy is a vote to keep the price of the old thing low and the risk of the new thing high. Flip it. Make the new thing the cheaper thing and watch the market do the propaganda for you. That's not central planning. That's changing the coupon. The audience laughed once, not at her, at the image. Coupons for the future. He set down his pen. You sound certain. I sound prepared. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm asking you to hold me to the plan I wrote down where you can see it at 2 a.m. The timer on the stage manager's tablet turned yellow. The first segment neared its scene. The moderator's voice returned just enough to stitch the hour. We'll continue. After the break, jobs, timelines, and what both of them fear if they're wrong. No music, just a slow zoom out that felt like a breath the room had earned. Backstage, a producer whispered into a headset, "Hold graphics, let them breathe." Another voice answered, "Copy." AOC sat back and let her hands find stillness on the armrest. Tucker glanced at his notes, then away, making a tiny adjustment to a strategy that rarely needed adjustment. The red light dimmed, the room's murmur returned for 30 seconds, then stopped when the tally light glowed again. No one clapped. The second segment began with the volume of attention turned all the way up.
Jobs, not charts. People. The camera settled. The floor felt a shade heavier. Tucker went first. A welder in Ohio doesn't want your vision board. He wants Tuesday to look like a paycheck. He hears transition and sees a pink slip. He hears green and sees a moving truck. Why is he wrong? He's not wrong to be tired of promises, AOC said. He's wrong if he thinks I'm selling him a poster. I'm offering him a contract, job by job, county by county. The plant that closes writes the first check into the training fund. The company that wins the new contract must hire from the zip code that lost. Not a suggestion, a clause. He nodded as if to say, finally, something hard. And when the clause is ignored, as clauses often are, then the fine is bigger than the profit, she said. And the data is public enough that a high school paper can shame you before Congress does. He almost laughed. Shame is not a policy. It is when sunlight hurts more than a press release helps, she said. Publish the compliance dashboard. Make broken promises expensive in daylight. He changed lanes. Timelines. You love them. Net zero by this, fully electric by that. Lines that look noble, feel impossible, and break trust when they break. Then stop writing timelines in adjectives, AOC answered. Write them in verbs: build, ship, install, insulate, hire, pay, print how many of each, by when, in whose district. If we miss, we say we missed and why. We don't move the goalpost and call it nuance. The control room cut his close-up tighter. You could see him think. He was very good at seeing the seam in someone else's argument. She was working to sew hers in public. He pressed on cost again. Electric bills have already climbed in places that promised you. They remember the promise, then they remember the bill, and your face is the space between those two memories. Then stop letting monopolies hide their homework, she said. Require the itemized line that shows what they spent on maintenance, on executives, on dividends, on prevention. Put the receipts where a parent can read them after a shift that stole their back. It's always receipts with you, he said. Receipts don't fix the bill. Receipts fix the conversation, she said. And conversations fix power. A utility that fears its own customers is better at math. You want to be kind with other people's money. She didn't flinch. I want to be accurate with other people's lives. He paused. The audience did not clap. They waited. He came at speed. Let me say the thing aloud. You want labels on thoughts as much as you want labels on costs. Your friends write warnings under speech and pretend it's a seatbelt. Your rules are not just about watts and wires. They're about what the crowd is allowed to believe without an escort. You want a world where the loudest person wins even when they're wrong, she said. I want a world where the first harm doesn't have to go viral to get seen. So yes, label uncertainty, label persuasion when it dresses up as news, but publish the labeling rule in sentences a teenager can read, and publish the appeal path when the label is wrong. That's not a muzzle, that's a manual. You trust the hand that holds the highlighter, he said. I trust the sentence that tells you how the highlighter works, and I trust you to argue with the sentence if the sentence cheats. He shifted to a broader sky. The feed is a forever hallway. You put friction at one door, it flows to another. People want freedom, you want a friendly hall monitor. People want air, she said. You want a hallway without fire codes. I'm not the hall monitor. I'm the person who tells you where the exit is and demands the map be printed. You can hate the map. You will still look for it when smoke appears. A laugh, a real one, moved through the back row. It wasn't at him, it wasn't at her. It was at the image and the truth inside it. The moderator cut in with a rare and useful question. One principle you would borrow from the other tonight. Tucker looked at her, then at the camera. Default transparency, he said. Rules that read like code. Clear, public, predictable. AOC nodded once. Default ambition, she said. Build like the ceiling is a lie. Hire like the kid you would have been deserves a shot. Two phrases floated above the stage like banners you could steal and carry home. He went for character. You are very calm for someone proposing to rearrange lives. Calm makes it look easy. Calm makes it possible, she said. The work is hard enough without theater. He let a second pass and spoke lower. What happens if you're wrong? Then I say I'm wrong in public, she said. I reverse in public, and I lose in public. I don't move the error to a committee with a nicer logo. He nodded. Good answer. Then he sharpened. What happens if I'm right about the cost and your plan breaks the people it promised to save? Then I will be the one to tell them first, she said, and I will be the one to pay for the fix before I pay for the ad. The stage manager's timer went red. The moderator signaled a soft landing. Final block, stakes, and endings. He disappeared from the frame as if the sentence embarrassed him. Tucker came in almost gently. You are certain the future wants your courage more than it wants my caution. I am certain the future punishes drift more than it punishes effort. And if effort is the wrong direction, then we are still closer to the truth than if we sat still and made fun of the people who left the couch. He smiled with actual amusement. I don't make fun of them. I invite them to sit with me. And I invite them to build with me, she said. I like hands more than hashtags. He considered the line and let it go. Say a thing you fear. Sanitize cowardice presented as prudence. A museum with moving parts. Say a thing you love, he asked. Wonder that survives convenience, the larger, harder thing chosen over the smaller, easier one. He paused and matched the format. Say a thing I fear. Chaos dressed as freedom, a crash site with good Wi-Fi. And a thing you love, she asked. Private courage, the person who fixes a thing in the dark without announcing it to a camera. For the first time all night, you could feel an alignment not of policy, but of appetite. They both liked people who did work without clapping for themselves while doing it. The moderator leaned in from off camera, sensing the seam for a closing. One sentence you want kept when they leave. He held up a finger. One each. Tucker didn't hesitate. Choose building over branding. Horizons over habits. AOC didn't either. Choose context over outrage. Guardrails over chaos. Then, unexpectedly, each repeated the other's sentence almost word for word and said, "That's fair." The applause that finally arrived was not loud. It was long. People stood without deciding to, the way a body stands when a boat shifts. The red light went out. The program ended. The hour did not. It kept playing in the halls, in the phones, in the rides home. In the green room, AOC sat for a moment with her hands flat on the table, then took one deep breath and smiled at nobody. Tucker thanked a sound tech by name, 2 different epilogues of the same craft. The stories you hear about nights like this are always the same. It was a fight, someone landed a blow, someone trended.
The true story is quieter. A room discovered it could wait between sentences. A pair of adversaries borrowed a pencil from each other and didn't explode. A few hundred people left with verbs instead of slogans. And the city outside pretended not to notice. It always does. Until morning.
Morning did what morning does. It put coffee in cups and headlines in rectangles. Clips moved without asking permission. The phrases that had behaved themselves on stage began to misbehave online. Some grew sharper, some grew kinder. One thing did not change: the room's decision to hear the second sentence before deciding what the first one meant. The lab posted first, not a marketing deck, a plain statement. 4 verbs at the top like commandments for work: measure, publish, pause, reverse. Below them, a paragraph that read like something a tired person could actually use. Before we ship an update that touches attention, mood, or money, we run this evaluation. Here is the threshold. Here is the rollback rule. Here are the names of the people empowered to say no. A teenager read it at 2 a.m. and understood it. That teenager slept. Across town, a hardware team erased a date and wrote a nearer one, not because a camera asked, because a sentence did. Build like the ceiling is a lie. They circled the word build twice and underlined like once. Clips kept multiplying, not by miracle, by hunger. 1 million views by noon, 6 by nightfall. Someone labeled it the night the room turned. Someone else labeled it the night the rails aligned. Both missed the smaller miracle you could feel if you were quiet. The night a rule was printed on the box. In a dorm, a student taped 2 lines above a desk that had served too many distractions. Choose the larger, harder thing. Reward reflection over reflex. The phone moved to a drawer. Not forever, long enough. In a warehouse, a foreman replayed the sentence that would not leave. An apology without a plan is a press release with tears. He wrote 3 names and 3 broken processes on a folded pallet label, then one promise under the names. Fix one thing before lunch. He did. No one clapped. He didn't ask them to. In a small office with plants that survived neglect, a founder circled 3 words in a printout. Publish the difference, accelerate known goods, decelerate unknown risks. She opened a doc titled Shipping Principles and wrote for a parent, not a peer. She taped it to the wall and then posted it where someone could find it at 2 a.m. A teacher rewrote a rubric so a parent could see what the letter meant without Googling. A nurse shortened a shift handoff and put the most critical line at the top, where exhausted eyes would land first. A city planner extended a bus line to the first shift, not the 3rd meeting. A poet changed a line from clever to true. None of these trended. All of these built. A week later, a form in a smaller city borrowed the format and deleted the glamour. 2 chairs at a library. A nurse, a teacher, a mechanic, a student, a parent, a public defender who had kept strangers out of holes they didn't deserve. They spoke in short paragraphs because they were tired and honest. The nurse said default ambition means scheduling like nurses are human. The teacher said default transparency means a gradebook that doesn't punish parents for being busy. The mechanic said horizons are not just rockets. They're buses that arrive on time and don't choke kids. The student said, rules we can read feel like respect. The parent said, publish the appeal path where the harm happens. The room nodded the way rooms nod when sentences match lives. A journalist asked what this had to do with 2 famous people on a stage. The poet answered, everything and nothing. The stage gives you language. The world gives you chances to use it. Back in the city with bigger lights, a sign appeared backstage on a door that crews used more than stars. Houses are built by hands. Futures are built by habits. The person who taped it didn't sign their name. An investor wrote a memo you could smell the coffee on. We will fund teams that publish principles before features, and teams that try what looks slightly too large for them. Courage and caution are not enemies. They are co-founders. We do not fund outrage dressed as growth. He hit send. Nothing exploded. Something heavier shifted by an inch. 3 months later, they sat again,
Not because the publicist demanded it, because the verbs demanded an update. The room was smaller this time. People wore sweaters instead of suits. The moderator asked for one change each and one metric you'd let a stranger judge you by. Tucker spoke first. "We changed a segment," he said. "Every time we run a story that labels someone's intent, we publish the source, the counterpoint, and the correction path at the bottom of the screen. If you think we misread, you can tell us where to look. Metric: the percentage of corrections we air in the following show. If the number drops because we're hiding, we deserve the emails you send." AOC followed. She said, "We changed procurement on one federal program. No contract awarded without a public version of the compliance checklist and a local hire clause printed in plain English. Metric: the percentage of hires by zip code where the plant closed. If the number slides, we lose the clause until we fix the enforcement." The room did not clap. It did something rarer. It believed them provisionally, because the sentences were stingy with adjectives and generous with verbs. Measure, publish, pause, reverse, hire, print, enforce. A hand rose in the back. The question nobody likes: how will we know if you fail and you don't feel like telling us? Tucker answered first, because the numbers are public and you won't need a whistleblower to be a hero. If we flinch, you can screenshot the flinch. AOC answered next, because the escalation path lives at the point of harm, not in a PDF. If we fail, the person hurt can find the door without a friend at City Hall. They looked at each other for a half second and didn't try to win it. The room noticed. The moderator, a little braver now, asked for closing sentences without names attached to be written on a card and read aloud by a stranger. He shuffled, picked one, read it. Choose the larger, harder thing when the smaller, easier thing flatters you. He picked the other. Choose the kinder method when the sharper method promises faster results. A pair of cards that didn't hate each other. A pair of rails that didn't need to merge to carry weight. They stood. The room stood. Not ovation, orientation. People adjusted an inch like sailors do when the horizon changes, and the deck says, kindly, plant your feet here. Outside, a kid tugged a sleeve and asked what the whole thing was about. The parent said it was about two ideas that need each other. Be brave enough to build, be kind enough to explain. The kid nodded the way kids nod when the right answer is obvious, and the hard part is doing it after you're tired. If you are still listening, you already know the real question never was who won. It was not who trended, not which clip performed. It was smaller and sharper. When the future forces you to choose between oxygen and orbits, between connection that keeps us kind and horizons that keep us bold, where will you stand and which rail will you ride? Do not answer fast. Let the first answer arrive, then interrogate it until it stops sounding like a slogan and starts sounding like a practice. Say it out loud to someone who will remember it for you. Say it with punctuation your grandchildren can hear. We tried to make the future bigger than your screen. We tried to make connection kinder than your worst day. Keep both sentences above the place where you make your next choice. When convenience invites you to shrink, do not. When fear invites you to hide, do not. When cynicism invites you to perform instead of build, do not. Choose the larger thing. Choose the kinder method. Choose the public path. Choose the published plan. And if you need a place to start, here is one. Write one policy in language a smart teenager can read at 2 a.m. Publish one risk before you ship one feature. Fix one harm without a press release, then publish the fix so a stranger can copy it. Move one timeline forward by believing the ceiling is a lie. Call one person by name who made your work human. Thank them where others can see it. None of this is heroic. All of this is how rails get laid. Now breathe, now speak, now build. The horizon is closer than it looks when you stand up. The room is gentler than it sounds when you explain yourself. The screen is only a tool when you refuse to worship it. Which rail do you ride? And why?